Hey everybody, and welcome to Stu Bob Reviews. Today I'm going to be counting down my top 10 science fiction and fantasy books of all time. 5 honorable mentions. Titan by John Farley, an amazing otherworldly science fiction book. Titan by John Farley, an amazing, like unicorns, sentient dirigibles, a moon that is a space station, that is an inside-out world, that is a really godlike entity. What the heck is that? That there's nothing like it. Second honorable mention is Farnhan's Freehold by Robert Heinlein. Controversial, amazing book. Number 3, Old Man's War series. Quick read, really cool, lots of fun. Fourth honorable mention, Ender's Game series. A boy plays RTS for the fate of humanity, but then has to live in the post-apocalypse universe which he created. That's really heavy for a book. Main character is like 10. Enough said. And the fifth honorable mention, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. Number 10 is A Door into Ocean by Joan Sklitskiak. Why is this book on my top 10? This book is interesting, amazing. It does really cool things with the idea of technology, society, and how to deal with conflict resolution. It is one of the most fly under the radar books I have on this list. It is also one of the only books that I've got my wife to read, and she really likes it. So again, if you're not really into sci-fi or fantasy, skirts the idea of what is sci-fi and what is fantasy with how they deal with the technology. I've not read anything else by her, and that is my number 10, A Door into Ocean. My number 9 is Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke. This is one of his shorter novels, and it is also just been made into a science fiction series. It is very, very good, a very tight read. It kind of like is X-Men in like the 1950s. It is really tackles the issue of what is humanity and where is humanity going. Really is now segued by aliens and technology instead of the idea of what is humanity. And that is my number 9, Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke. My number 8 is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. It is a fast-paced science fiction novel that really ties into anyone born in the 70s or 80s. If you're born in the 90s, then a lot of the names and a lot of the references will be lost on you, and that kind of sucks. But I read this in a weekend. The ending is a little poor, but that being said, it is an amazing little book, and that is my number 8, Ready Player One. My number 7 is Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson. This book needs no introduction and no overview. It is gorgeous. It is amazing. It has a lot of detail. And that's what he does, and that's what he does really well. But the storyline here is throttle awesome. It is so fast. It also tackles ideas about religion, language, and technology in a way that really hasn't been done before or since. It is an amazing read, and this is probably one of the most popular books on this list, and that is Snow Crash, my number 7. My number 6 is the first series of books or trilogies, and this is the Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn. You knew Star Wars was going to be on the list. This was the first trilogy I ever read, and it also shows the antagonist, Thrawn, with almost the same amount of page length and intensity as it does with the protagonist, which is what the Thrawn trilogy. So what happens after the Emperor dies? The Death Star explodes again. What happens to Luke, Leia, and all the gang? Who can stand in the way of the Rebel Alliance? Thrawn. And that's why this series is so good. And that is my number 6, the Thrawn trilogy. My number 5 is the first short story on the list, and that is Dark They Were with Golden Eyes by Ray Bradbury. I read this in 9th grade, and it blew me away. You can find it in such short story collections as S for Space or A Medicine for Melancholy. This short story, in a nutshell, talks about how the environment shapes the human and how the human has to abide by the environment. In some ways, they can't change it. They have a group of space explorers which gets cut off from Earth, and they have to live on Mars on their own, and about how they survive, kind of like The Martian, but in a different aspect. All right. And my number 4 is Dune by Frank Herbert. This is one of the most popular science fiction books of all time, so no shock that it's on my list. This is high fantasy at maybe one of its best. The first few hundred pages basically tells you what's going to happen, and then you watch it play out with the introduction of the Harkonnens, with the introduction of the Spice, with the introduction of the Emperor, is the entire story, and you know that all these crazy things are going to happen, and you are just really excited about watching it play out. You know about the giant freaking worms, and you know they're going to play a big role in the book. As my number 4, Frank Herbert's classic, Dune. My number 3 is the Robot series by Isaac Asimov, one of my favorite writers of all time. So again, this is a series which contains iRobot is the first book, The Caves of Steel, The Naked Sun, The Robots of Dawn, and Robots and Empire. All of these books have these two main characters, Elijah Bailey and R. Danelle Oliva. Elijah Bailey is the human, and R. Daniel Oliva is the cyborg or machine component, and together they work to solve mysteries and crimes, and it is just a fabulous, fabulous series. iRobot is a little different, but those last 4 are all talking about these same characters, and it is just an amazing walk into Isaac Asimov's idea of the future. That is my number 3, the Robot series by Isaac Asimov. And my number 2 is The Bulgariad by David Eddings. Now again, we're getting into lots of series here, and this is a little bigger. This has 5 books in it. We have The Pawn of Prophecy, Queen of Sorcery, Magician's Gambit, Castles of Wizardry, and The Enchanter's Endgame. This is an amazing series. I think it's better than Lord of the Rings. I know people are saying heresy right now. Some people will see probably as a step down from Lord of the Rings. Maybe some people see it as a step above. Depends upon how you're looking at it. It explores very deeply issues of culture, language, race, religion, in a unique and deep world with lots of layers. You never feel the characters are safe. You never feel like the people can't die or leave the group. And if you have a young person in your life, you can read this to them, which isn't very sophisticated, full fantasy book, and it is a great place to enter the fantasy genre. That is number 2, The Bulgariad by David Eddings. And my number 1, The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. And this is also the biggest series in the entire list. The Wheel of Time, if you've never read it or heard about it, is the most amazing fantasy series of all time, period. It is deep, thick, it is luscious, it is brimming with theme and questions about the nature of humanity, society, life, culture, religion, and it takes you on this journey that is not a singular path. Unlike with Lord of the Rings, that you're basically following Frodo and maybe some other side characters, in The Wheel of Time, you are following many people. Many characters are developed. Many character arcs rise and fall, and you care about the characters. The Wheel of Time is supposed to be made into a TV show again, sometimes in the future. We'll see what happens with that. I would say that this book was the hardest to read out of any of the books on my list because of the language, and he makes up so many words, and you may have a really hard time with keeping track of what all these different words mean because he does name lots of things in his books. That being said, it is 11,582 pages in an entire series, and that is a lot to tackle. And this is not including the prequel New Spring, which I haven't read. So that is my number 1, The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, a fantastic series, and I can't wait to read again. This has been Stu Bob Reviews with my top 10 sci-fi and fantasy books of all time. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe.